Welcome back to episode 37 of the Service Design Podcast. We went to Toronto to the Service Design Global Conference and walked the floor meeting lots of you. Take a listen and hear what it was like or to relive this wonderful edition. A big thanks to the Service Design Network and the organisers of this conference. So we just ran into one of our Belgian friends here.
Hello.
Hi Marlies.
Hello, how are you?
How's it going? And you're standing at a table together with
Beth.
Beth. Beth, where are you from?
Washington, D.C.
And what do you do there?
Service design, UX, graphic design, or graphic facilitation rather.
Okay, and what about you, Marlies?
I run Twisted Studio with Lies, my co-founder, and we support organizations in the social sector to create services bottom up, and we use human-centered design and service design to do that.
Okay. Yeah, and Marlies, you're nominated for one of the awards, am I right?
I know, I'm so nervous. I am super nervous. In a few hours, we will know.
We'll definitely cross our fingers.
Yeah. Can you maybe explain a little bit about the project that you are nominated for?
I can try, yes. So it's called Laboratory Mobile Alternatives. That's a free translation from Dutch. It's for our very first client back in 2016 when we started Twisted Studio. They were our very first client, the Network of Sustainable Mobility. And they wanted to help government with a more participative process of involving citizens in mobility issues, shortly said.
Great. I read a little bit about it, and what I think was really nice is that you actually gave the design process to the client, and that you let them do all the work.
Exactly.
Which also means they learn how to do it themselves. Is that something which is happening now?
Yes, I mean, for us, for Twisted Studio, that has always been our kind of unique, I guess, selling thing, right? In the beginning, it was also like a budget thing. Like, we wanted to work with clients, but clients couldn't afford us. So then we started seeing, like, what could we have the client do and coach them so we don't have to do it and don't have to charge for them. So, but then we saw that clients really picked up on this, and we said, like, wow, this is really something we should continue doing. Because not only does it empower the client to do this work after we leave, but it's just more sustainable, I guess. Like, they are also convinced because they do it themselves.
Yeah, great. I think this is already a topic which has been part of some of the talks that I already saw. They're talking about the evolution of service design, and that indeed that we have to think bigger and not just be designers of the services itself, but that we should connect people in a network and make sure that the network becomes strong enough to take initiatives themselves. So I think it's an evolution that a lot of the people here are going through as well. So it's interesting that you say that you started working in that way.
Wow, yes, great.
Is there something you are looking forward to at the conference? A talk or a workshop?
I'm looking forward. I have already noticed today and yesterday is that, how do I say this? Like, it's such a interesting level of discussions that you have right here. And sometimes deep inside me, I've struggled with the same things, but I never get to word it like they do here. And then I'm like, yes, that's what I also feel. Like, oh, thank you for explaining it and articulating it like this, because yes, that's what I feel. So it's a kind of like, connecting with people who are going through the same thing, like searching for better ways to do stuff. So it's not one particular talk that I'm looking forward to, but just like the overall vibe, sort of.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we wish you all the best of luck with the award ceremony. We'll be crossing our fingers.
I really hope. That's like not okay to say, but all of a sudden they said like, oh, so if you win, you have to do like this Pecha Kucha presentation. and we already had to send it in. And I had to make it like, you know, in the nighttime because there's all this stuff coming.
Oh, yeah. You
But
don't want that work.
oh my
for
god,
nothing.
like Pechakucha is like it's so stressful.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the award ceremony is today?
4, yeah.
Okay, good luck with that, and I really hope we can see your Pechakucha.
Oh no!
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Well, we bump into two lovely ladies here. Let me see if they want to introduce themselves.
I'm Laurel McLeod. I'm from Victoria.
Hi, I'm Karen Carpenter from Miami.
Okay, and are you working as a service designer, or what are you doing?
I do marketing and communications and a little bit of UX work, so on the sideline of service design for a digital agency.
Yeah, I'm an experienced strategist. I do design strategy and service design.
Oh, nice. And did you already see a talk, or did you do a workshop that was interesting?
Yeah, they've been great so far. I really liked the second talk; was amazing with the University of Oslo, and really enjoyed the dandelions metaphor. With yeah.
Can you maybe explain a bit about the metaphor that you used for the people who were not here?
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about getting to the root of the issues in organizations and really changing that so that rather than getting just dealing with the day to day.
And for you, what did you enjoy so far?
Well, there have been some really great speakers talking about different things. I've been really impressed with how much there's been like red threads going through a lot of the talks around accessibility, inclusion, as well as, I'm going to say it wrong, equitable. Basically about being equitable, basically looking at, you know, the point of view, the point of power that designers might be coming from when they're working on trying to solve a challenge, and looking at all the different aspects of, you know, who are you working with, what are you trying to solve, and just really taking a look at where you're coming from and making sure that it's right for, you know, what you're doing. So whether you need to co-create or create for somebody, you know, just for us as designers to be more thoughtful across the board with that, I think has been a really great call out this year.
Yeah, it was a talk about a power and the power we have as service designers, and that we can decide who uses our services. I'm sure you also were at that talk then, but I find that really inspiring as well, like, and where service design can go and where it's going, and that challenges are often a lot bigger than the ones we do inside an organization, but like the whole network around it, and found that really inspiring as well.
Yeah, no, they've definitely, there are some things that I want to go back and look more into, especially around systems thinking and, you know, organizational design, because when you start looking at the dynamics, even the power dynamics within an organization, you start to see how that can affect, to what you're saying, like, you know, who is included in the process, be that in the research or be that in the creation, and, you know, what effect does that have on the service that you're trying to design?
Yeah, that's a theme I saw as well, the systems thinking. That's also a field in itself, of course, systemic design. Do you think, is that a good thing that it splits up in two fields, or is it for you part of service design?
I would say it's more tools in the toolbox. So I recently took a webinar online around design thinking for the social sector. And they really did a great job at showing how strategy, more business strategy, along with systems thinking, along with something else, it's going to slip my mind right now, but basically how all three of those, when brought together, can actually help you when you're trying to solve more complex problems. So if a problem is a little bit more straightforward, perhaps you don't need as much of the systems thinking. But if it's something that's like homelessness, something that's bigger and larger, where there are a lot of different stakeholders that come into play, and might be trying to do something already, or might be, you know, needing stuff. You know, it really helps you to find where to play, how to frame the challenge, and then, you know, get the right people in the room to start working towards change.
Yeah, and that's our job as service designers as well, to make sure we see it a bit broader than it normally gets presented by our clients, I would say. something you are looking forward to, a specific talk, or maybe a workshop that you will be doing?
That's a good question. We're just heading into. I'm forgetting the full name of it. The workshop.
There's a really great workshop on problem framing. So if you're not able to frame the problem correctly from the start, you might be solving for the wrong thing. But he also tempted us with the fact that he's got a great, framework for using your project framing to also help scope your project. So that sounded very useful.
Okay,
excellent.
Great.
Well, enjoy the lovely sunshine. And,
yes.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Nice meeting you. Bye.
Hey, we just ran into Adriana Ojega. We met you previously already. And by now, I think I saw you started your own podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, we were inspired actually by you guys, and what we are trying to do in Mexico is to have a podcast in Spanish because we are missing a lot of content in Spanish. So you were our first inspiration since last year.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
That's great to hear. Really good.
We're also here with Farah. And can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, Farah Leiva, also collaborating with Adriana and Priscilla in Service Design Network. Really glad to meet you guys. We listen all the time.
Thank you.
Excellent. What episodes have you done so far?
From our podcast, you mean? Well, we only have one so far. We are planning the second one, and we talk about inclusion, like being more inclusive in the companies. And we had Selene Castilla, who is also here. She's the head of Latin America for Scotiabank. So that was our first team, and we are doing the next one. We are talking about chatbots for service design touch points. So yeah, it's going to be interesting as well.
I think inclusion is also a big topic at the conference here. There's a lot of workshops and talks about it. What do you think service design can bring?
Oh, a lot. I mean, I also work for a bank in BBVA, Mexico. And for example, in the enterprise bank, we are a woman is represented only in 10%. So we have a lot of work to do. And I think in leadership, in women, and the service designer we have to be like ambassadors of this because we listen to the people. So we have the ability to transform all this information and the keywords, the messages to the right people.
Yeah, I can imagine in the context of a bank, it's also important to make a business case for inclusion. Can you talk a bit about how you work on that in your context?
Okay, I don't work in a bank anymore. I used to. Now I work in a technology company, but we still have those problems because it's like very male-based companies. And in my experience in the bank, like last year, I was still working there. It's not only about like the woman, but we have to think about the different social contexts we have in Mexico. So what we are trying to do is work around all the educations for finances, because in Mexico it's only like 20-something%. I'm not sure of the number, so just don't stick with that one. From people that actually have like bank accounts. So we have to be more inclusive also in that topic. And yeah, we still have a lot to do, like so many years to work on.
Yeah, then there of course is a business case if there's only that little people who have a bank account, and you can it's a major opportunity for commercial organizations. Like we work with government a lot, and there they just have to include all people because all citizens need to be part of their service. So I think it's a bit of a different approach, but it's both, I think, super important, and you see it here in the talks and the workshops as well.
And also, for example, in the sector of financials, it's supposed to be more women in a perception way, but it isn't. I just have been making user research for a journey map of credit for enterprises, and all the users that I interview, the 80-90% were only men. So that paints that picture of we have to work a lot more.
So bring more women into those organizations. Yes, yeah. Great.
We do notice, though, in the field of service design, it seems to be a very equal field. If I look at Night Moves, for instance, there's a majority of women working there.
That's true. It's going the other way, actually.
And looking at the conference as well, it's compared to a technology conference, this is a very equal area.
Yeah, we are trying to get there. As I said, there's still a lot of things to do, so it means we'll have more job for the next year. So we'll just keep working on that field of inclusion. Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Thanks a lot. Enjoy the conference, and we'll see you around.
Yeah, and all the best with your podcast.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Hello. We're from the Service Design Podcast, and you're standing here in the lovely sunlight. Can we talk to you for a few minutes?
Sure. I've listened to your show before.
Oh,
Yay.
great.
That's great.
Can you tell us who you are?
I'm Aaron Lewis. I'm based on the East Coast of Canada and independent, but doing a lot of work with Veterans Affairs Canada right now.
My name's Augusta Calloway. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi in the southeast U.S. And I work as a public sector consultant, helping state agencies transform to an agile work method.
Great. And have you enjoyed the conference so far? Was there something which is still stuck in your mind that you're thinking about?
Good question. I went on the tour yesterday, which was really awesome to see all the different spaces and meet people along the way. And then Josina's presentation this morning of just sort of the underlying assumptions of design. I thought was there was a lot in there to go through, so I want to go back and give some more time to that.
Yeah, I also found that talk very inspiring, like what she said with the iceberg, that you have some norms and policies and rules in companies that we sometimes don't manage to grasp enough to do our projects well. So I think that's a big challenge for all service designers to make sure that we take that into account in our projects.
Yeah, indeed. And you, is there anything particular you enjoyed? Did you go to a workshop yet?
Have not been to a workshop because I couldn't figure out how to register. So there's that. But I would like to say that I was extremely impressed with the opening with Red Sky, and then the talk about First Nations and art and storytelling. As an American, knowing our history as a country being very similar to Canada, where the stories of Native people were obliterated and a lot of tragedy still lingers. And also now too, in America we deal with the issues with slavery and all the, aftermath of that. And that's something I see every day on my drive to work. And so having that awareness of cultural sensitivity at the very forefront and opening of the conference was very impressive to me, and I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I also thought that was very powerful, very honest to own it like that. I thought that was a very strong start for us. Yeah, this is a place people from lots of different countries come to, and it really does put Canada, I think, in a very good picture that it dares to start like this.
Mm-hmm. It would be more unlikely to have that type of opening in the United States, in my opinion.
Okay. How did you, what did you think of the opening? Because you're from Canada, so you are inside of this culture. Can you explain a bit? Is it something which is brought to the surface quite a lot, or is it mainly in the design world now that they're talking about it?
It's increasingly sort of the sort of giving respect to and awareness of the lands that we're on is in ceremonies and public gatherings becoming quite common. And yeah, it made me quite proud to be Canadian. Of sort of, we're on this journey. There's all kinds of work left to be done in terms of reconciliation, which Jesse touched on. But we're working through it, and it's there's many people and stakeholders and systems to work through to get there. But we're on the journey, and yeah, we're going there.
enjoy the rest of the conference and the lovely sunshine still. Well, we'll be seeing you around.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing your podcast. I really learned a lot.
I'm sorry, can we interrupt your conversation for a moment? I recognize you, Judy. We spoke to you on the podcast before.
Hey, how are you?
Nice to meet
See,
you.
I didn't recognize you but your voice sounded familiar.
Okay, that's good to hear. And we're also standing here with Gordon Roth.
Hello, how are you?
Good. I just followed your talk, which was super interesting. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of theory in 30 minutes.
I agree, but I think you brought the theory in a very nice way. So I think it was really nice that you made from such a complex book for us a nice book summary.
Thank you. The Coles Notes version, as they'd call it here, the shortened abridged version. So there you go.
Great.
And also, Deborah, I see. Where do you work?
I work with Gord at OXD.
Yep. All right. I'm sure you guys were having a really interesting conversation. Great minds like this. Can you fill us in? What were you talking about? Was it anything earth-shattering about service design?
We were talking about a project that we're working on right now. I will not be able to disclose the details of that project on the for our purposes, but just talking about sometimes the difficulties of getting access to the end user or the stakeholder that you actually want to work with, and how even in the most well-meaning projects where that is the goal of the project, that is the stated goal of the project, sometimes you're still not allowed to do that work. So that is still a thing in 2019 that service design has to grapple with. So,
Gord, Deb, and I feel like we've been through the trenches together, so we share this bond of having gone through the ups and downs and worked on a very long engagement. So we're just catching up and sharing some stories.
And do you have some suggestions or some solutions on that topic? Things you have been discussing that you think that might work?
I mean, it's just about finding different ways of reaching out to people. So, if you can't go out and be there in the space with them, you can bring them in. If you can't do that, then you reach out to them individually through phone. Like worst case, you reach out to them electronically. It's just about like trying all of the different options until poking at each of the different ones until you find one that works.
It's still early in the conference, but have you been seeing any recurring themes or topics showing up so far?
I mean, this is confirmation bias in action because it was what my talk was about, but I think power and equity and topics of who gets to be in projects and for whom projects are for seems to be a recurring theme right now. It happened at Members Day yesterday when we were talking on our little Members Day discussion, and a couple of the talks obviously today have reached that topic as well too. In an important moment, I guess, in service design as we move beyond simply methods and frameworks and start to maybe contemplate the bigger impact of our work.
Why do you think this is like a topic that service designers can play a role in?
I think...
Maybe.
Patrick. I think, again, the context of our work, as we are becoming more influential maybe, and the scope of the problems that service designers are working on are like larger systemic problems, we are encountering the hard facts that like with that large scale responsibility comes like a new ways of working and acknowledging, again, what power we hold or how we disempower people with the things that we design. So I think it's a byproduct. It's both a good sign and a bad sign of the scope and the scale of service design's reach and influence these days. That's my kind of working hypothesis at this point. So, and the world needs it because there's a lot of people who are disenfranchised by services, government, private sector, you name it. So,
yes.
Okay. There's a voice from above telling us
yes.
It's going to start again. So, yeah.
Yes, thanks
nice
a lot.
Nice to see you guys. Excuse me, Samuel. I'm interrupting you during a lovely bite to eat.
Hi.
So we're at the end of the first day. How's it been for you?
Oh, it's been exciting, exhausting, but super inspiring, and it's just fun to have the whole community back together.
I saw you were very active on Instagram and other social media. I think it's super good because you managed to let the people who are not here also enjoy the conference a little bit.
Yeah, that's the idea. So a lot of the social media activity on Instagram was asking people who are not attending to send in questions to speaker, sponsor, teams and everything, and I'm trying to answer that.
Yeah, so for the people who don't know Samuel, he's a social media guru of the Service Design Network. So
yeah, that's true. Yes, I take care of the whole of all of the social media channels, all of the digital activities that we're doing, promoting all the projects. So right now, it's all on the conference.
Yeah, and we've been seeing a theme today with a lot of about responsibility, the impact you can have as a service designer on the world. How do you feel about the ongoing themes you've seen today?
My perspective on today was there was also a recurring theme besides the topic of building bridges, but there was also a lot of talk about power and power structures in service design and what that means to be the one like working with that and also being empowered. Like, what do you do with that responsibility?
Yeah, I also saw some talks about the topic, like how we can empower people and give people in organizations the power back, but also have a big responsibility actually to choose the right services that we are designing and involving the right people, but that also often means involving some people or leaving out some people that are not involved in a service or in a process.
Absolutely. I've talked to another attendee here, and he put it in a quite interesting way, because if you're the one designing for a new system where it's changing a power structure or just affecting it in any way, you're also kind of a gatekeeper. Just what you said, there is the potential of keeping out marginalized groups, so it's super important to think about it responsibly.
Yeah, I think that brings me to another topic which I think is very hot here. It's inclusion and inclusive design, and I've seen already some different definitions of it, like people who are talking about, for example, more women in business, but also people who are talking about people who have, for example, low income and cannot afford your services, people from other cultures that have been shut it out for a really long time.
So that's a tricky thing, because just how you we're just counting the things that affects. It's like what I actually can't answer that question. What is meant with inclusivity here? Because it touches upon so many different areas and sectors. And then again, we are at the point of the power and responsibility of thinking, okay, it's like, who am I designing for? So that's actually hard to answer, but it's good to ask that question.
Yeah, and designing for and even designing with, like how to involve them in the whole process is like a huge challenge.
All right, well, we're going to let you enjoy the reception. We're going to enjoy the reception too, and look forward to day 2.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you guys for always being here. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for reporting on the whole conference for the whole world who is not here.
All right.
Together we can bring everybody a little bit closer if they're not able to come.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Cool.
Great.
Chris Ferguson, you need no introduction anymore on this podcast.
Yes, we have Jamin as well. And Mary Eve.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Could you briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Marie-Ève Bélanger. I'm Manager of Design Strategy at Bridgeable.
Okay, so we have a couple of the co-organizers of this year's conference. First of all, I want to say thank you on behalf of all of you, of course, for a wonderful content this year. It's been amazing. It's been amazing to see the choice of topics that there is. Really dealing with the responsibility we have as designers and showing how we can change the world. It's been one of the most inspiring editions so far, I think. So thank you, guys. How do you feel about it?
So this is Jamin. Yeah, I feel great about it. I mean, it's always interesting to partner with a local service design team, in this case, Service Design Canada, and have them bring content. So a lot of the content and then the review of the submissions was really their part. So they're bringing their perspective on service design into the conference, and I think that's why we're seeing the themes that we are in inclusivity and building bridges.
Yes. What do you think of the first day?
Oh, wow. I feel motivated. I feel inspired. I feel ready to do more. I think what we showcased was actually where service design is right now. This kind of watershed moment from moving from something more tactical to really changing the world to some extent. We've been wrestling with themes of power, of social good today, and I think these are just themes that will keep showing up in the future for us as designers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, part of the thinking going into this and part of the theme was really focusing on this idea of how can we do more as service designers. And I think if you look around at what's happening in the world right now, there's a lot of really negative signals that the ways in which organizations operate are really failing people and humanity. And I think that as the people inside that are helping shape services, which make up 80% of what people do in their lives, I think we have a responsibility to think about how we do that consciously and how we do it in a way that's going to be beneficial.
What struck me was that there was so little digital design today. Is it a sign that service design is breaking loose a bit from the digital world?
I think that's a very good observation. I sensed that, but I don't think I nailed it yet. Yeah, definitely a lot more in the systems and what's behind the scenes. We saw a lot of iceberg metaphors and the beliefs and the culture that are underneath that we can affect, and not just the products and the interaction. So yeah, I think maybe service design is getting deeper.
Yeah, indeed. Service design is always described as holistic, but this year seems to be taking holistic that step further and really digging into systemic design. Do you see that as a separate discipline, or do you see that as part of service design?
Well, to some extent, as an aside, the topic of service design as we approach it today really feels like a Canadian way of seeing it as well. So service design here, the tradition is more around social innovation and social good as well, and it's framed in a social way, in public sector way as well. So I think that's one of the disciplines that is just being brought to the fore a bit more these days, and I think it's something that we need to include more in our decisions later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also the way you that culture was present at the conference was super interesting, like the opening speech we saw, and then we also went to another talk. I forgot her name, but she's an Aboriginal from Australia, and it was super inspiring. She was telling her story and how her family, community were like dismissed for a really long time in the country, and how she's now using design to bring the pride back. And I think it's the first time that I see so much of this culture inside a service design conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking that with the with our opening keynotes, who's Jessie Wente, who's Ojibwe, I don't think I've ever seen a native person, an Aboriginal, speak at a design conference I've ever been at. You know, so just I think we know that diversity and diverse ways of thinking and diverse ways of understanding the world help us, that the more we can bring together these different views, it just makes it richer and more beneficial for us to solve problems. But I think I think it's gone a little bit, it's a global community, but I feel like we're expanding that even bigger now, which is really exciting.
Well, great. I think the reception is actually open,
yeah.
So
I would you've deserved to celebrate day one. So
I'm sure you want to go there as well. So thanks a lot for speaking to us.
And we look forward to day two.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, great to see you.
So we're standing here at the reception, and with two ladies. I was in a workshop with you. We'll go into that in a moment. But you were also on the stage just a moment ago to announce that next year's conference is going to be in Denmark.
Yes, absolutely. It's absolutely amazing. We look so much forward to. Even though I also think that we just should enjoy the fact that we are in Toronto now. We are still doing the 2019 conference, and it's amazing to be here. So now we're just enjoying this, and I think on Monday we start we start dreaming and working on 2020.
Yeah, it's going to be hard work, I'm sure, but very rewarding as well.
Absolutely.
You already introduced some of the topics which are very interesting, I think, to all of the people who might be coming to the conference. Some of the topics that make Danish design important, both on the product design, but also on the service design field. I remembered one, which was democracy, but could you fill me in on the other ones?
So what we talk about when we talk about Danish design, and maybe we can talk about Nordic design, is what is actually unique to the way we design in the Nordic region. So beyond or besides democracy, it's very much about designing based on trust and with a social aspect, inclusive empathy, things like that, but also with a huge attention towards great craftsmanship and aesthetics, which is also very, very important when we talk about service design, because it's often intangible, but also combined with a lot of tangible elements that need to be highly crafted. So that's some of the elements.
Very exciting, and one good thing about it being in Europe again is we'll be able to take the whole team probably. And Sarah, so I was in your workshop. Could you very briefly tell the audience what the workshop was about?
Yeah, so what we experienced in the workshop was that we actually stepped into the future and immersed ourselves into what does future of healthcare look like in 2050? So what does it actually feel like to be a human in the future, and really understand the different potentials, but also the challenges that we are facing in the future, and really start to discuss these things and actually decide where we want to go with our future of healthcare.
Yeah, an important element in the workshop was some audio scenarios where we got to experience a bit of a future vision through sound. And what I found worked really well was that it helped me with a discussion partner to have a very nuanced discussion about where it should go. Because, yes, the audio showed some extremes from different directions.
Yes.
And, yeah, it helped you to start thinking from that point of view instead of just thinking from the today.
Yeah.
So I thought that worked really well.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do with the healthcare scenarios is actually pushing sort of the boundaries and provoke a little bit and inspire people to actually think new things and rethink our healthcare system and what we actually do when we are experiencing these audio clips is that we're actually putting ourselves into the scenario and really start reflecting also from a personal level on what will it feel like to be me in this future, and what will I prefer, and what are the consequences it will have for me as a person and for my family and so on.
Well, I wasn't in your workshop, but I saw some pictures of a lot of pills.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit what was happening there?
Well, maybe the pills was sort of a gimmick. It was candy, but I mean it's kind of the drugs we need people to take before traveling into the future, and it's also kind of using those small tangible elements to foster the conversation, and also
exactly, yeah.
And also what I would also say that also to put a little sense of humor into it, because it also helps create a more lively dialogue where people feel confident.
And I think it also adds another perspective when you actually, so when you talk about the future of healthcare, you talk very much about precision medicine and personal medicine and tracking data and so on and so forth. And I think the whole gimmick on giving people pills before they enter into the future is just, it reflects and gives some perspective on the discussion, at least, yeah.
Okay. Final question. So you're from the Danish Design Center. We don't have a Belgian Design Center, I think. What is it?
So the Danish Design Center is the national center that try to stimulate the use of design among Danish businesses and in the public sector, try to grow the Danish design industry, professionalize it, globalize it, and also to brand Danish design. And primarily today, what we're doing is that, like with the future scenarios, is that we try out different experiments. We want really to experiment with different ways of using design to create new business models, actually to shape the next, but also, of course, to tackle some of the large issues or problems that we are facing. So basically, we are a group of people at the Danish Design Center that are continuously curious about new ways of using design and methodologies in exploring how we can create more meaning and more impact for people.
Excellent. All right. Sorry. Smashed you in the face with the microphone. Well, thanks a lot. Good luck in organizing the conference for next year, and we will see you there.
See you next year. Looking forward to welcome all.
Great. Hello.
We're interrupting another conversation.
We're here with 3 lovely ladies. Could you please introduce yourself?
At the same time? Oh.
One at a time, sorry. We were too synced up with the microphone. Yeah.
Yes, they are.
We'll start from this end.
Anne-Marie Lesage. I'm from Montreal. I teach the UX design in a business school at HEC Montréal.
I'm Terry Costantino. I work for the Ontario government, and I've been in user experience design and service design for more than 20 years.
And I'm Shauna Segal. I work for the Ontario Digital Service, part of provincial government of Ontario, and I've also worked in user experience design and service design for about 20 years.
Yeah, and we spoke to you, of course, as one of the organizers of the conference.
You did? Has it met your expectations?
Definitely. We already spoke to Chris and Jamin and another lady. I forgot her name for a moment.
Yeah, I also.
Yeah. And we thank them for a really great first day. To you also, I think it's one of the best service design conference days I've experienced so far.
That's so great. I'm so pleased to hear that.
Really good. What?
How many service design days have you seen?
Well, I've been to, I think, about 5 editions now.
Yes, and I think the topics were super inspiring today. Like, not all core service design, but really around topics that are super important, and I think we all feel that we should work a little bit more on. But so I have a lot of ideas for going home. What do you think of the first day?
That Shauna had mentioned to me months ago, as one of the Canadian organizers, that they were looking for Canadian content. They were trying to figure out how to do that. And I think the bookends of Canadian content that they did today was outstanding. As someone here in Toronto, it was all an eye-opening to me, and I'm sure it was to the visitors to Canada. So I thought those were really outstanding sessions.
Yeah. Are you happy about the first day?
Very happy. I'm especially pleased that the weather has been beautiful. So in our partly outdoor venue, no rain, a little chilly, but just enough to keep you awake. So that's good.
Yeah, we heard about, Chris, that actually we are in like a valley, a river valley, and that if it rains, it might sometimes also get really wet on our feet here, so that he was very happy that there was no rain.
Absolutely. We do have some flooding sometimes, but luckily, Mother Nature has designed an experience for us that we can't copy.
And I have heard that this roof leaks.
Oh.
So let's be happy that it's not raining.
Yes. Is there something you are looking forward to for the rest of the conference? A topic or a specific talk or just some atmosphere?
I want to say, I'm not sure how to answer your question, but there's one session that I really wish I had seen, and so I'm going to look online to try to catch it. It has to do with circular design, so and I really wish I'd caught that one. But so, to me, it's my 4th conference in Canada. It's by far the best one. I was expecting, let's say, 1 out of 4 to be interesting, and it was like, no, not at all. It was more like all of them or mostly everything. So it was really impressive. Great job.
All right.
Great. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening, and also, of course, tomorrow, the final day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Yasmin. Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, my name is Yasmin, event manager working for Service Design Network, and I helped organizing this conference.
Yes, and you helped us as well with organizing some of the interviews.
Well, that was mostly my colleague Candle who helped you organize the interviews. I was more in the background.
Okay. How are you enjoying the conference so far?
I really do enjoy it a lot. Like above all, our last talk today with Sita Kopp, it was super, super impressive. Like, I mean, you saw it, right? Like, it was standing ovation. I was super impressed.
Yeah, exactly. The last talk was so inspiring. Like, we are still looking for Zita Kopp, if I pronounce it right, because it was super nice. I thought something I didn't really expect here yet, but I think it's a great selection to invite her.
When we got her on board, we were all very happy because she is a great personality. Above all, in Canada, everybody knows her. But I was at the beginning like, okay, about a Holiday Inn? What? Vogel Island Inn? What is that? But then I got to know more about her background, and I mean, the presentation spoke for itself. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And indeed, I think that was the first standing ovation like that I've seen at a conference ever. So how has it been the weeks leading up to this? Are you still alive?
Well, I'm still standing here. Sleep is not that important. That's what you notice when you organize a conference.
Yeah.
So what's your role at the conference these 2 days? What are you mainly doing?
Mainly, I try to clone myself to be everywhere and help out with workshops and talks and so on. But yeah, just a bit of everything. My main role is here in the talk area, but as I mentioned, cloning myself would help.
Yeah, I've seen you walking around like crazy, and then I was like, she's here, and now she's on the other side. So I think you're indeed, it seems like you have cloned yourself already.
Yeah, maybe for next year, try to organize a Segway or something like a Vespa so that I get from A to B faster. But yeah, I think the first day was great. I'm very happy, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Great, we are too. Thank you so much for organizing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy that you're here, and enjoy the reception.
We'll do. Thank you. Bye.
Well, we're here with Marlies, who is our co-Belgian service designer, and we are super proud because she won an award.
Yes, man. I didn't win it by myself, of course. It was Twisted Studio, which is me and Lies. But yeah, it was so unexpected. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Oh, what the bleep just happened?
Oh, but that's the first swearing we've had on this podcast. But this is a reason to do it, I think. Big congratulations.
Thank you.
Super cool.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, you already explained a little bit what the project was about because we interviewed you already before the ceremony. But could you say like one sentence again what you won the award for?
Well, I'm gonna have to grab my award from my bag because.
We're seeing it live.
Just for the people who are not here, we are actually looking at a service design award. It looks wonderful.
Super shiny.
It looks like in Hollywood, even, right? It's like
really,
plastic. Oh, maybe that's not a good word to say it. Anyway, the category, which was also on the screen back like an hour ago, was lean approach to service design and prototyping. When they announced it, I was like, oh, but we're not, nominated for that category, so my name or our name is definitely not going to come up now. And then all of a sudden it was on the screen. I was like, what? Are we lean approach to service design and prototyping? Wow.
I think you are, because how you explained it, it was a small budget, but you worked with a lot of partners and you taught them how to do things themselves, and you actually coached them and trained them.
Yes.
So I really think that award fits the project that you did.
Wow, but it's like seems like such a fancy fancy category name now. Like, wow.
And did you already call your partner in crime?
Yes, of course, WhatsApp. I was like, hello, lady, we want this. How about this? Like, woohoo, yes.
Do you already know where you're going to put it?
That's a good one. We don't have an office. We have a co-working space that we only work on Wednesdays, so they might have to be like the place that we put this on. I don't know. It's a shared award with all the co-workers then. Voila.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations. We're going to speak to you a lot longer because, of course, we speak to all the winners of the Service Design Award for a full interview about the project and everything. So
yes.
Looking forward to that.
I'm super excited because now we can do the interview together in Belgium around the same table, yes. Because normally we do it through a call with people around the world.
Nice.
But then we can meet up for a coffee and have a conversation about the project.
Perfect, yes.
Great. Thank you so much and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hello.
Could we
Hi.
ask you some questions?
I guess so. Who are you?
We're David and Stina from the Service Design Podcast. And
Okay.
we're walking around talking to people on the conference floor. And
All right.
who are you?
My name is Ben. Ben McCammon. Yeah. What are you talking to people about?
About the conference?
About the talks, how they went, and what inspired you. So maybe you can share a little bit about that as well.
Sure. I think the one that's standing out for me today, I think, was the talk about Fogo Island. I think specifically that idea that we need to like reconnect with communities and that you can actually build something. I think the thing I'm taking away is that idea of like it's more important to be specific and focus on like what is it that makes a place unique and original, which that's lots of food for thought. I don't know, that one I was scribbling notes, I was like almost crying at some point, so that was a pretty powerful one. Yeah,
I thought so too. Like we always say service design is holistic, but that was like the project was truly holistic. Everything was like taken into account, like the whole community with every small detail in the hotel. So
it takes holistic to a whole new level for sure.
Exactly. And what I found really interesting is that she has a background in economics, really a business person, but the way she was talking about this hotel was like so much more than just about the money side of business. I think that was like super inspiring.
Yeah, and even the holistic part of like it's a very tangible thing, but that little the label of like where does the money go, right? I thought that was really powerful too. It's kind of like flipping an economic viewpoint around to say, okay, sure, we can pay attention to money and numbers, but let's look at it from the other way around. Where is this going, right? And who benefits from this stuff?
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing the consumer could actually get used to and expect others to do as well. I think it's a beautiful example.
Yeah. And like she said, when they introduced like, nutrition facts, everyone was like, oh, wow, you can't do this, right? This is crazy. But now we accept it as like, oh, of course we have that.
Yeah,
of course that should be on every piece of food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's a great one of those examples of like, how do we use something from a different domain and say, well, okay, there's nothing stopping us from taking that good idea and applying it to something very different, which I think is also something that service designers do all the time, right? Another talk I said, it was just kind of jokingly, but talking about like, what have we stolen from other people and other disciplines and other ways of knowing, and we got to keep doing that. We got to keep stealing good ideas and applying them in ways, in ways that are helpful and ways that are actually beneficial to people. But there's nothing wrong with stealing a good idea that already exists, right?
No. Where are you from, Ben, and where do you work?
I'm from Toronto.
Okay, a local.
Yeah, and I work at an investment company here in Toronto called Mackenzie Investments. So I lead a small in-house service innovation team within the company.
Yeah, and is service design a regular part of your practice?
Yep, we do a combination of service design as well as kind of continuous improvement and more process-oriented stuff, but there's lots of overlaps So some of the challenges we work on are more process focused, and some are much more people focused. Depends on what we're doing, but yeah.
And what did you think when you heard that the service design conference was coming to Toronto?
Oh, I was really excited because I've been to a couple of the Canadian ones, but I've never been to one of the global ones, so it's just kind of, obviously it's super convenient. But I think it's also, like a couple of people have mentioned today, like service design is quite new in Canada in terms of, or I guess in comparison to maybe other parts of the world. So it's kind of, it's nice to see it come here, and maybe an opportunity to like accelerate things or build on the momentum. So yeah, I mean, if you asked me even like 6 years ago, like what is service design, I probably would not have had an answer for you. So just to kind of put that in perspective, yeah.
Great. What did you think as a Canadian person of the first two talks, which was about your culture and of your country?
I thought it was great. I mean, yeah, Jesse's talk was great. I think like the thing that stood out to me for that one was this idea of like who's not present, who's not represented, whose stories are not being reflected at all. Just one of those like, so my background is visual design originally, like my first career, and so in that world we, you know, you kind of get trained to pay attention to like negative space, like what's, you know, not the stuff that's there and that you can see, but the stuff that's like been omitted or is around that. And I think, you know, to make maybe a corny analogy, I think that's that idea of like, yeah, there's the stuff that we see and hear and kind of hits us in the face, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's absent or is maybe the space around that we don't really pay attention to, right? Human beings, we're used to paying attention to the you know, what we call the figure, right? Not the ground, the stuff that's like right there and that we can see and is, you know, explicit. It's very, 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 very hard for us to pay attention to the opposite of that. So, you know, having people surface that and remind us about that, I think is really important.
And I think actually visual design or graphic design can play a big role in that, making the invisible, put it on the table and discuss it, and make sure you also co-create what is invisible.
Yeah, like Josina's talk was a bit about that, right? How do you take the stuff that's kind of invisible and actually make people say, oh, I can see this now, now it makes me think about it, now maybe I need to change something, or maybe I need to change my own behavior because now I'm actually paying attention to this.
Great.
Right. No, nice to meet you, Ben, and enjoy the next day of the conference.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Well, we're here with another fellow podcaster from Let's Develop Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Good to be here.
What's your name?
My name is Arda Soyans.
And I heard you were a volunteer here at the conference?
I am. It's an incredible opportunity. You get to see everything from the back end. You get to see people's confused and smiling faces as they come in and explore from the very beginning. And you get to see how tired and inspired they are by the very end.
Excellent.
Really nice.
And what is this podcast of yours?
The Let's Develop podcast is a platform to explore how people in various industries, in various communities, co-create social change. So we're thinking service design, of course. We're thinking psychotherapy, management consulting, and otherwise. How do we do this? And what's it like?
Yeah. And have you found inspiration at the conference for that field of interest?
I have. I've seen numerous people who aren't quote-unquote service designers, but they practice the tools of service design, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. What are the practices out there? What are the mental models out there? And I've been coming across people over and over and over who are playful, who are curious, and who want to work with people, not on people, not for people.
Yeah, I think that's a topic which a lot of people are talking about, like how to be inclusive in your process and to bring in the right people, and that we have the power to bring in the right people and therefore decide like who can co-create a service with us. So
absolutely, yeah. And it's awfully difficult. Though it's not something that should be a barrier to continuing to move forward with. Absolutely.
What is something that's inspired you during the conference so far, like specific speaker or topic?
Yeah. Her name was Terry, and it was a workshop yesterday where we made music together. We played drums. We were in a drum circle. We had various instruments from different parts of the world. And the reason why it was inspiring was because you get to see folks from the artistic expression community come in and be like, hey, why don't we try this out when we're creating facilitations? What's it like for you to not have to talk but still communicate? And so it got me both feeling very grounded, because there's something really powerful about being in a group that's co-creating something with no judgment, with totally deferred judgments. But also you're in your body because you're playing with the instruments, you're playing with your hands, and then you get to debrief and process. And I felt like it was like a really rapidly accelerated place of building relationship and play, I guess.
So how did it look? Was everyone in the workshop playing an instrument? Or
Yeah. So there was a good amount of people, and we started off by trying out smaller instruments. So we would create patterns together. We would create like circles together of passing on a note or trying to communicate with the particular instrument. And then after that, we had a choice of, do we want to play on, let's say, the drums, or do we want to continue to play with the smaller instruments that have, each of which adds like a little bit of a timbre, a texture to the overall ensemble. And the facilitator ran us through various activities, which included, again, communication through music, through sound, deep listening, and debriefing.
Cool. And what's it like being a volunteer here at the conference? Is that for the people next year maybe who are considering being a volunteer? Is it something you'd recommend?
Do it. Just do it. I mean, you get to be in a space with incredible people, and all of the volunteers are also incredible people. And you get to spend time with them too and get to learn about their process. What are their visions? What are their hopes? What are their practices? So you feed off of each other's energy. And then you also get to give back, which fundamentally is very important.
If people are interested in your podcast, where can they find it?
So it would be letsdeveloppodcast.com. There's no apostrophe in the let's, just straight letsdeveloppodcast.com. And feel free to reach out to me as well, Arda Soyans.
Great. Excellent. Always nice to meet fellow podcasters.
Indeed.
Thanks a lot.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
Thank you.
Cheers.
We're seeing a familiar face, somebody who gave a really touching talk yesterday. Hello, Vicky.
Hey, how are you?
And you're standing here with a colleague. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Alasne, and I also work at the Australian Centre for Social Innovation.
Okay, I remember the name TAXI, but not exactly what that stands for. Could you explain to us what is TAXI?
Yeah, so TAXI means the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. So we are a non-for-profit organization. We work with different, it could be philanthropy, it could be government, could be councils, private sector as well, in order to bring more equity to the world and improve people's life. So that's basically what we do.
And there was another person standing here. I'm sure you were having a very interesting conversation. So can you introduce who you are and also maybe introduce the topic that you were discussing with the ladies?
Yes, so I'm Ben Hartridge. I'm a researcher at the Dartington Service Design Lab in the UK. And I've just given a talk about social science and service design coming together. And that was what we were talking about now. I think you guys were saying that it just sort of reflects the approach that TAXI are taking, having a multidisciplinary approach to all of the problems they're trying to tackle.
Yeah, great. Yeah, yesterday I think you yourself, but also the audience was really touched by your story because it was such a personal story, and also I think that's a theme that's coming back to in the whole conference, that we should co-design more with people who have the experience already that we are designing for, and that's something we don't do enough. How do you integrate that in your process when you're collaborating with people in the community?
I don't know. I find that hard because I just do it.
Yeah.
I am who I am. This is my face. not that you can see it. And I just go out, and this is what I do every day, not just in my work, but in my life in community, out in the real world. And I just talk to people. I get stuck when I get asked this question because it's such a hard question to answer, because I am just me and I just do.
Yeah.
I don't know if, Lasne might be able to answer the question.
I think it's been a really interesting process, because Auntie Vicky was going to give this talk in the conference, and then we were talking about how we, we value lived experience, and we work with people that have lived experience to design services, programs, change the system. And then Auntie Vicky was telling me, but why do I need to explain that? That's what everybody does, right? So I think we are so embedded that's the mindset that we have at Taxi, and all the work that we do, that it's actually difficult to explain it because it comes really natural and it's our basis.
Yeah, and I think just having to give people context when it comes to culture is, so you were doing context in, what you do, and I was doing context in my personal lived experience, I guess, so that people can feel how I feel when I go out and try and understand, there's things that aren't right in the world. And then I wasn't too sure whether I was explaining the design process properly, but that's how I see the design process in my head, what we saw yesterday. So, I don't know. I feel like I'm...
Yeah, it's been really interesting for us as well to come to a design conference, and we know, we are talking about design, and it feels that you need to have a design degree to be a designer, but we actually believe, everybody is a designer.
I think, service design, more than any field, is about just taking everybody's individual expertises and bringing them together. And I often also think service design is just common sense, but if you do it often, you find some methods for it.
Because I often think, people say, so what do you do? And I go, I'm a social innovator. And I go, whatever that means, because I feel we all socially innovate in one way or another. And I do it just from a cultural lens to be able to make it better for my Aboriginal people in Australia, but for other cultural places around the world, to be able to move forward together, because you can't just do it from one particular point of view.
Yeah, but I think it's really beautiful that you say that for you it's actually just something you do and you don't overthink it, because I think a lot of the designers sometimes get lost in the process and they try to follow the process and they know they have to co-design, but they don't really know when, and whereas it's actually just talking to people and involving them. But it feels like people need some rules and guidelines again to do that. So I think it's really nice to see people who are approaching it from the totally different sides like you do.
Are you taking anything home for your own work? Something you've seen, something you've heard that you will take into your practice?
So I've had a few reflections. I think what I've noticed is a very strong involvement or desire for service design to get involved in policy and involved in policy design. And I think that's going to lead to some very difficult questions about the role of kind of particularly user research in democracy. Because if you speak to a group of users, they're like 5 users, and that affects the policy you come up with, it's not really democratic because you've only spoken to 5. But at the same time, we know from successful service design projects that you can get really rich insights from just speaking to a few people. So I think, what I'm going to take home is a cautionary tale about getting involved in politics and think about how service design methods are or aren't democratic.
Yes, nice challenge. Something you are taking home, another talk that you saw or a workshop?
I'm going to laugh now because it's all around. It's all around the double diamond, and I feel like I should have left my conversation or my talk yesterday, not with what would a cultural canvas look like for you, but what does a double diamond look like to you? Because I've heard so much about double diamonds, and not being a designer, it just was like, what, double diamond? So sorry, that's what I'll be taking home. But it's been really, really nice to be able to see all the different ways that people can build bridges and do it in all the different levels of design, I think. Whether it be human-centered or up here at, at a government level. Or,
Yes.
Perhaps what I'm taking back home, it's been really nice to hear about like diversity, it's within the conversation among designers, and I'm really glad that we are actually talking about it and making, taking actions towards creating a more diverse future. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Enjoy the last talks of the conference, and thank you for speaking to you and the talks you gave.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Hey, we ran into a familiar face, a fellow podcaster.
Hi, it's Marina Tartarian from the Y Lab and Y Service Design Thinking.
Yeah, and who are you? You're standing next to Marina.
I'm Ben Schreiber. I do design strategy at Bank of Montreal.
All right. So how are you guys enjoying the conference so far?
Oh, it's fantastic. I can't believe it's almost over. I'm really sad. The speakers have been really amazing. You can't take notes quickly enough.
It's my first service design podcast. In-person event. Listened a long time, listened to your podcast. And it's really interesting to hear the case studies that people from different companies show. From healthcare, from finance, right across. So I like to see the diversity.
Yeah. What's something you will be taking home from the conference?
One thing I'm going to apply sooner than later is going to be the nudges from the person from Live Work put in. So presenting nudges to some colleagues. I mean, I'm aware of it. I heard about nudges. I've read some of the books and all that. But I'm going to think about that more next time we're doing a digital interface or calling for call center systems. Yeah.
Yes. What about you?
You know what? I loved the economic nutrition label that the founder of the Fogo Island Inn came up with. I think it's such a great way to honor the people that go into our services and also give you an opportunity to perhaps include social innovation or something else additional to the service that you might not normally think about, but just putting everything so transparently and in such a brilliant way. I could swear when she put up the slide, there was just this hush around the room because we'd never thought to, visualize it in that way. But once you do, it just seems so useful.
Yeah, so at Fogo Island Inn, or Fogo Island Hotel Inn, So what they did was they actually visualized where the money was going that you were giving. So you could see if I stay a night and half of my money is going to the labor of the people, like 10% is going to food. So I also thought that was actually super great that this transparency was displayed, and it's something that a lot of services, I think, could do in a really good way.
Could do more of that, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a sort of thing you hope that will normalize at some point. Like she said herself, that everybody expects this from a company to provide a label like that. That would be really good.
Yeah, I've seen some of those similar labels on clothes as well, because that's also, I think a couple of years ago, that's been a big topic that they thought like we should know a bit more about our clothes, where they're coming from, and it didn't really break through. So I hope in services it actually will.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to see that in clothing, where we now see 50% cotton, 20% spandex, and whatever the rest. But it'll be interesting to see where the recyclability of that goes too. So often you might toss it in the garbage, or Zara has a program, you bring it back into Zara, but you don't know how much of that is recyclable. So it's interesting to see where your money goes, and particularly how it stays in Fogo Island, in her example, and Newfoundland and Canada and the rest of the world. So the attribution is really cool to see that transparency.
Yeah, that would be super cool. I think the next speaker, one of the next speakers, Tom from TerraCycle, he will also talk about waste recycling and so I'm curious on how we could maybe link the label to his talk as well.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what he has to say.
Okay. Something else you think you will be taking home?
You know, I really loved seeing that there was representation for behavior science with service design. That's a space that I'm really interested in personally, because I think that every time we talk about touch points, we have to honor customer behavior and just human nature and human behavior, right? And I'm glad to see more and more of that conversation coming out, and what does it look like in practice, and what does it look like both from a behavior science and a behavioral economics perspective at different scales. So I'm glad to see that more people are talking about it, and I'd like to dig into more of what LiveWork is doing with that space.
Yes.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, enjoy the last moments of the conference, and perhaps see you next year.
Yeah,
Thanks,
definitely
guys.
Copenhagen, I think,
So
right?
good to see
you.
See you. Thanks.
Bye-bye. The Service Design Podcast was brought to you by the Service Design Network and Night Moves. For more information, previous episodes, or to join the conversation, please visit servicedesignpodcast.com. For more information about the Service Design Network, visit service-design-network.org, and for Night Moves, visit nightmoves.be. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to this podcast. The intro and outro music is from If the Stars Grow Dim Tonight by Hydrogen Sea featuring I Will, I Swear. Until next time.